Until you get to $1 million, you can just do one of these. And if you're going to do two, do content and warm outbound. This is the easiest way to start. It's also the cheapest. Here, you have to have a really good skill set. This is also pretty cheap. It's just harder to do. But if you're gonna do cold outbound, you might as well start with warm. Start with people who aren't strangers and then level up to people who are strangers. But these ones are the least expensive way of getting customers. This is the most expensive, but it scales quickly. So once people have found out about our stuff, great, so now they know, but now we gotta get them to give us money. So now we gotta get them to buy. When I started my gym, I hated the idea of sales. I even had someone say, hey, you're a salesman. And I was disgusted by the idea. I was like, I'm an academic. And so then I had to pay rent and clearly was like, how do I get these strangers to give me money? And immediately learned sales. Now, over the last 10 plus years, I've done 4,000 plus consults. And it wasn't until I had to transfer that skill of sales to other people that I had to create a framework that was repeatable for other people to also close. I remember the first time I went home for Christmas, I had an employee close their first sale without me. And I got teary because I realized it was the first time that my business could make money without me. And so this is the framework I have, which is closer. And so this is an acronym and it's very simple and it's easy to remember. And the reason that one's smaller is not because R is less important. It's because Amazon, Jeffy B, decided to only send us 5 of the right ones instead of the 6th. So the first of the closer framework is clarify why the person is there. And so fundamentally, the big advantage that we have as a business is that these customers have reached out to us. And so we need to clarify why they even took the time to reach out. Why did you respond to our ad? Why did you respond to my email? Why did you comment on my post? Whatever it is, if you haven't engaged leads, which means that they've responded in some way, then they've taken the first step. In basically every form of advertising, this exists. And most people aren't cold calling and then immediately closing. And so even in that situation, you would call them, set an appointment, and then on the appointment, you would then say, hey, what made you take this appointment? What made this worth it for you? And then what we're doing here is we're clarifying the problem. That leads us to the next letter, which is L, which is label them with the problem. Now that may sound similar, but it's actually very different. So what we're doing is when we label, we say, so it sounds like you are here, you want to get here, and this is the thing that's getting in the way. Does that sound about right? And so what we've done is we've said, this is your current, this is your desired, and we've established a gap and sometimes an obstacle. That's a monster. Okay, and what we want to do is we want to position ourselves as the sword that can kill the monster and ultimately get them to their desired end state. But we can't sell unless we have a gap. And that is why C and L are so important before you get into anything else. So for example, you're 200 pounds, you want to be 150, 50 pounds is the gap. The reason that you're struggling is because you don't know how to work out, you don't know how to eat. Let me see if I can do a spoon here or a fork. There you go. You don't know how to eat. And you have no one who's holding you accountable to making sure that you do these first two. In a B2B setting, it's like you're doing 10K a month and you want to make 100K a month. And the issue is that you don't have ads that are working or you don't have enough leads that are coming in. That brings us to the next thing. Once we've clarified we're there, we've clearly labeled them with a problem. You're here, you want to be here, this is the problem. Then you overview past pain. All right, I call this the pain cycle. So you overview past experiences. The reason this is so important is that pain is what motivates action. And so if you think about motivation in general, it's always from deprivation, like I said earlier. So you being overweight and reminding them of how overweight they are and the cost of being overweight this whole time, it basically further brings them this way. It expands the gap between where they are and then where they want to go. And the further that gap is, the bigger the rubber band is. And so remember, this is our amount of deprivation, which is the amount of motivation to get someone to buy. And so when we do the pain cycle, we simply say, what have you done before? How'd that work out for you? And then the pieces that they liked, you compare, you associate with your solution, and the pieces they don't like, you associate with why it didn't work and why your solution is different this time. Once you get to the end of, okay, what'd you do? How'd that work for you? Oh, it's different in this way. Oh, it's similar in this ways. What else have you tried? You keep going through that pain cycle to continue to poke on that pain button, to keep expanding the gap between where they are and where they want to go, and the frustration in the present for not having achieved it. And so once we've overviewed the pain, now we sell the vacation, S. A lot of people, salesmen, this is when salesmen blab. This is when salesmen lose the sale. And the reason they lose the sale is because they just do this massive monologue. And that doesn't work. Instead, what you want to do is come up with what I call a 3-pillar pitch. And each of the pillars is usually 1 or 2 statements and then followed by an analogy or a metaphor. And so you say, hey, if you want to create SEO to get more leads, then it's kind of like, and then we basically make our transition, it's kind of like when you get a paycheck and when you have an investment account. Your paycheck, you work and you get paid every single month, but you put a little bit of that money towards your investment. Over time, that investment compounds until eventually it makes you more than what you make in your active. And so SEO kind of works the same way. Now, realistically, there's really no similarity to getting traffic to a website as there is between paychecks and investment accounts. But it compares something that people understand with something that they don't understand so they can learn. And so fundamentally, you should come up with 3 analogies that explain each of the pillars of what differentiates your solution. If I was selling leads, which I came up with a script for mortgage brokers, it was the leads had to be exclusive, they had to be timely, and they had to be qualified. And so you just say, okay, have you ever got on the phone with somebody who doesn't have money and they're just window browsing? Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. Totally, right? And so it's like, cool, you just give an example, you give an analogy that explains it. If it's something easy to understand, examples. If it's something hard to understand, metaphor. And the reason I call it sell the vacation is that you'll notice that I'm not actually explaining much about the product at all. And the main reason is because they care about themselves, they don't care about our product. They care about their problems, not about our product. And the only reason they care about our product is if there's a way that they know with high conviction that's gonna get them to their goal. And so we wanna talk about Maui, we wanna talk about Hawaii, we wanna talk about where they're going, what it's gonna be like when they're at 150. What it's gonna be like when they're making $100,000 a month, not all the steps it's gonna take to get there. We're not talking about TSA. We're not talking about taking your shoes off and sitting next to somebody who stinks and getting on the plane and having bad plane food. Because guess what all of that stuff is? I just gave you an analogy. And so once we've done S, we then go to E, which is explain away their concerns. So at this point, after you've overviewed the pain, you say, hey, I think I might have something for you. Would you like to hear about it? They say yes, and then you go to sell the vacation. Once you've sold the vacation, you ask, you say, you ready to get started? Does that sound good to you? Any kind of closing question you want. Fair enough? Great. Now, if they then say anything but yes, I want to buy, you then go to E, explain away their concerns. And so the way that you explain away their concerns is that typically there's 3 big categories. So people blame their circumstances for why they can't do something. They blame other people for why they can't do something, or they avoid the decision altogether, which is basically blaming themselves. They give their power elsewhere. And so within that, you basically have 6 categories of questions that fall underneath. So 1 is they say they don't have the time. I'm too busy right now. Now's not a good time. The second is they say, I don't have the money to do this right now. This is too expensive. This is outside of my budget. Number 3 is they say somebody else has the decision-making authority, all right? The 4th is they say, I'm not sure this is right for me. This is a fit question, all right? Which is really just means that they have a preference that isn't aligned or that they believe isn't aligned with the product that you sell. Oh, I have to follow a meal plan. I don't want to count calories. 5 is they blame other people's past experiences with them. And so this is one that we overcome with something I call burn you twice, but it's other people's products. And then finally, they avoid. This is a stall. This sounds similar to this, but is actually very different. This is, I don't have time. This is, give me time. That covers the explaining away the concerns. There's 100 other closes I give you, but those are the theories behind each of them. Finally, we have to reinforce the decision. So now we have somebody who's made the decision. They've chosen to give us money, which is amazing. We love them for that. But the thing is that sometimes people change their minds when they go away, especially if you're good at sales. And so when you have the R, what we're doing is we're reinforcing that they made a good call. Now, this actually begins the handoff to onboarding. All right, so when you onboard a new customer, this is what happens in the first 24, 48 hours post-purchase. And what you want to do is make as many promises as you can in that time period and keep them so that they feel, and we're talking like, hey, this is what's going to happen next. In the next 30 minutes, this is going to happen, right? You're going to get an email, and then you can click that link, and then this is going to happen next. And you want as many of those things that you tell them to have happen to happen. And from this, we do something called BAMFAM, which is book a meeting from a meeting. And when you do BAMFAM, it means that no one ever gets left in the cracks. No one falls through. And so the reason that a lot of customers cancel is because you said someone's going to reach out to them and they thought it was going to take 30 minutes. You didn't set the expectations. It takes 2 days. And they're like, you know what? This isn't for me. I've changed my mind, right? Instead, you want to always have them. It's like a baton pass. It's like sales passes to onboarding 1 passes to onboarding 2 passes to senior engineer or the media buyer or whatever it is that you do to deliver results for people. And at that point, you've kept them through the process and you've reinforced, you know what? These guys are on top of it. They're legit. And if you want to make this extra magic, what you do is you pass on the notes. So you never want a customer to repeat themselves. And so the way you do that is that you take notes on every call. And so if you get on a sales call, for example, and the setter had notes, then you can start the call being like, hey, I know you talked to Andrew and you said this, this, and this, and these are the problems you're struggling with. They're like, wow, these guys are on it. And when that goes to onboarding and they have their onboarding conversation with Sarah, and then Sarah says, oh, I know you talked to Andrew and you talked to Jeff and you said these things. They're like, wow, this business is legit. Very small change, massive improvement in terms of how satisfied customers will be. And because this is all about making more money, the likelihood that they actually ascend and buy more in the future. Yeah, and if you're a beginner, you're the one taking all of these calls. So at the very least, take your own notes and remember what you're talking about with these people. And if you have multiple customers, review the notes before you get back on the call with them. Close more deals, make more money, save the world. We got them to buy, we got our first customers, we've made a little bit of money. Now we get them to buy even more. So now we got to get them to buy more times. And specifically, this is all the different ways that you can make a customer worth more money to your business. And so the idea is that the customers or the businesses that make customers worth the most are the ones that make the most money, unsurprising. But there are 8 specific ways that you can do this with literally any business. So the first way is that you can increase the price. So for this example, let's say I'm selling gum, all right? So I'm selling gum, and what I can do is instead of charging $5 for this, I can charge $6. It costs me the same amount, but I've now made more money. The second way that I can do this is I can decrease my costs. All right, so if this thing was originally $5 and it cost me $1 to make, I can buy more inventory, I can do advances so that I can get this down to 50 cents. So I'll still make 50 cents more per box. That's the second way that we make any product more profitable for us. The third way we can do this is we can get them to buy more times. So right now, I say, hey, you want to buy my gum? Great. But wouldn't it be cool if you got on a gum subscription? So you get one of these every single month. The fourth way is to get them to buy something else that's new or different. All right.